The Cathedral of Notre Dame of Reims, meaning Our Lady of Reims, known in English as Reims Cathedral. It's a Roman Catholic cathedral and is dedicated to the Virgin Mary, and it's famous for being the traditional location for the coronation of the kings of France. The cathedral church is thought to have been founded by Bishop Saint Narcissus in the early 5th century, probably around 401, on the site of a Gallo-Roman bath. Saint Narcissus, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, was martyred by beheading, either by the Vandals in 407 or by the Huns in 451. It was also on this site that there was an important conversion in the history of France, and maybe all of Europe. Clovis, the king of the Franks, was baptized a Christian here. Construction of the present Reims Cathedral began in the 13th century and concluded in the 15th century. That's 200 years of construction. It's a prominent example of French Gothic architecture, and it was built to replace an earlier church which was destroyed by fire in 1221. Although little damage during the French Revolution, the present cathedral saw extensive restoration in the 19th century, and then it was severely damaged during World War I, and the church was again restored in the 20th century. In 816, the Frankish Emperor Louis the Pious was crowned in Reims by Pope Stephen IV. The coronation and ensuing celebrations highlighted the poor condition of the church, which was the seat of an archbishop. Over the next decade, the Archbishop of Reims rebuilt much of the church, only ceasing in 846 during the episcopate of Archbishop Hincmar. The church's interior was adorned with gilded and mosaics, paintings, sculptures, and tapestries, and a lot of that is still here. Not sure what these weasel creatures with human faces are supposed to represent. In 862, in the presence of King Charles the Bald, Hincmar dedicated this new church. At the beginning of the 10th century, an ancient crypt underneath the original church was rediscovered. Under a different archbishop, the crypt, which had been the initial center of that previous church above it, was cleared, renovated, and then rededicated to Saint Remy. The altar has been located above the crypt for about 15 centuries, and no one knew it. Beginning in 976, Archbishop Adalbero began to enlarge and illuminate the Carolingian Cathedral. He completely destroyed the arcades, which took up a lot of the church. He decorated the main altar of the Golden Cross and enveloped it. He lit up the church with windows in which various stories were represented and endowed it with bells. In 1051, King Henry I of France and Anne of Kiev married in the cathedral. See, the royals married each other then, too. While conducting the Council of Reims in 1131, Pope Innocent II anointed and crowned the future Louis VII in this cathedral. And Louis VII is the king who founded the University of Paris and started the disastrous Second Crusade. Louis and his counselor pushed for a greater centralization of the state and favored the development of the French Gothic architecture, notably the construction of Notre Dame in Paris. Statue of Joan of Arc. A plaque to the French World War II soldiers. I am sure it's me, but this guy looks like Alfred E. Newman. Around the back of the cathedral is the Carnegie Library, which is an Art Deco library that the American benefactor gave to Reims. At nighttime, they do a laser light show on the face of the cathedral to show you some of what it used to look like when it was first done with all the colors, because now we just see it as gray cement color. But back when it was finished, it was a pretty imposing structure with all of the color. And some of the laser light shows people walking in and out, and some of the workers going on, and just a little bit of a show, especially to keep people's attention as things go on. This is the geometric drawings that somebody else would have seen as they were laying this out on paper. During the Hundred Years' War, the cathedral and city were under siege by the English from 1359 to 1360, but the siege failed. In 1380, Reims Cathedral was the location of Charles VI's coronation, and 8 years later, Charles called a council at Reims in 1388 to take personal rule from the control of his uncles. After Henry V, King of England, defeated Charles VI's army at Agincourt, Reims, along with most of northern France, fell to the English. The English held Reims and the cathedral till about 1429, when it was liberated by Joan of Arc, which allowed the Dauphin Charles to be reluctantly crowned king in July of 1429. Following the death of Francis I of France, Henry II was crowned King of France, and in July of 1547 in Reims Cathedral. Like a lot of eastern France, which flip-flop between the French and the Germans, this area seemed to flip-flop a lot throughout history between England and France. Although Reims was an important symbol of the French monarchy, the chaos of the French Revolution did not damage this cathedral much to the same extent as other cathedrals, even though it was thought to represent the royals more than religion of the commoners. When the English were expelled from Reims in 1429 on the approach of Joan of Arc, she had to practically force Charles VII to be consecrated in the cathedral, and as repayment, he let the English burn her at the stake. Just goes to show no good deed goes unpunished, especially for a strong woman.